Hello and welcome to this presentation on volcanoes. As you can see on this page here, we have a number of key questions that we need to have knowledge for about volcanoes. So we need to know what the difference is between magma and lava, what is a volcano and why do they erupt. We need to have knowledge on what the global distribution of volcanoes is and what the main features of them are. We need to be aware of the hazards of volcanic eruptions, what the eruption cycles are of a volcano, and then we need to be able to compare and contrast the characteristics of a shield and composite volcano and look at what plate margins these two types of volcanoes occur at. The first question we're going to consider is what is magma and lava? These sketches here demonstrate the difference between magma and lava. So magma is made of molten rock and is stored in the Earth's crust, so it's inside the Earth, whereas lava is magma that reaches the surface of the planet through a volcanic vent. So magma is below the Earth's surface, lava is above the Earth's surface. Both molten rock, but just the distinction is where they're located. We next are going to consider what a volcano is and why do they erupt. The photograph presented here shows you that typically a volcano is described as being a cone-shaped mountain which is formed from its eruptive products. So basically the lava and ash that ejects from a volcano builds up, and then over time that makes this cone shape which forms the volcano. So initially there will just be lava and ash, and it's repeated eruptions that build up to make this volcano cone shape. Not every volcano has this conical shape, as you'll find out when we look at supervolcanoes in another presentation. So moving on to the global distribution of volcanoes, we have a map here documenting where the volcanoes are occurring in our world, and they are represented by triangles, and we can see that volcanoes largely occur in lines along the edges of plate margins. The plate margins are shown by the red lines that are breaking up this map. They occur at destructive plate margins, for example, Mount St. Helens, where the Fuca and the North American plate collide. This is where you have oceanic crust subducting beneath continental crust. So that's a destructive plate margin. Volcanoes also occur at constructive plate margins, for example Iceland, which I'm circling on the map now, and this is where the Eurasian plate is pulling away from the North American plate. As that happens, magma rises up in between the two plates to fill the gap, and over time that forms a volcano such as Iceland. Volcanoes sometimes occur in the middle of a tectonic plate as well. For example, Hawaii, which I've just circled. This is called a hot spot volcano, and it's where a plume of magma rises and finds a weakness in the crust and extrudes, so it comes out onto the surface, builds up over time and makes a volcano. So volcanoes occur in three key areas: in the centre of a plate from a hot spot, or at a constructive plate margin where two plates are pulling apart, or a destructive plate margin where oceanic crust goes underneath continental crust. Volcanoes do not occur at conservative or collision plate margins because there is no subduction. Make sure that you're able to look at a map and identify the pattern of where volcanoes are located. Use the PDA technique to describe the distribution. Pattern, where are they? Generally, uneven, plate margins, etc. Detail, give named examples and plates that are involved, and any anomalies, which would be the hotspot. This diagram here represents the main features of a volcano. So we have the magma chamber underneath the Earth's surface, and this is where plutons, blobs of magma, collect under pressure because they are slightly different to the mantle magma. So they are going to separate out and collect in this chamber. As the pressure builds up in the chamber, the magma will rise and will force its way up through a vent. So this is a tube, and it will, under pressure, rise to the surface. sometimes the magma cools in this vent, blocking its exit. If that happens, the magma will force its way sideways, and we get what's called a secondary vent. So sometimes you get bulges on the side of volcanoes. Another word for secondary vent or secondary cone is a parasitic cone. At the top of the volcano, you have what is called a crater, which is a circular opening at the top where the material ejects from. The other features of the volcano are the actual lava that is emitted from the volcano during its eruption, and there is also the eruptive products such as layers of ash and lava. So over time, when the ash is ejected, the lava is ejected, it's going to drop to the surrounding area and it's going to build up on top to make the sides of the volcano. So the key features are a magma chamber, the main vent, the secondary vent, the crater, and then the actual layers that make up the volcano. This picture shows you the main hazards that are associated with a volcanic eruption. The first one I'd like to talk about is volcanic bombs. So these are pieces of rock that get thrown up into the air out of the volcano, and they can be quite large. Second hazard is the actual lava itself. So when the magma comes out onto the surface, it then gets the term of being called lava, and this flows down the sides of the volcano, and it is hot molten rock. At a composite volcano, this is 800 degrees molten rock. At a shield volcano, it is 1200 degrees. If the ash that is erupted from the volcano mixes with water, so it might be raining or the ash might deposit in a river, then what we get is mud flows that run down the sides of the volcano. And the key term for these mud flows is lahar, shown here, Lahars. The volcanoes, composite volcanoes, are high altitudes, so are often ice capped, so they have snow and ice on them. So as the volcano erupts, that snow and ice come out and again can mix with that ash and contribute to making these lahars. They are fast, can be up to 40 kilometers per hour, and are very destructive. The last hazard to mention is pyroclastic flow. Pyro means fire, clastic refers to rocks. So a pyroclastic flow is a flow of fire rocks, and it moves down the valley sides of the volcano really fast, and it's piping hot, and it's going to suffocate people, and it's going to scorch them. These are the hazards associated with volcanic eruption. The eruption cycles of a volcano can be categorized into 3 groups. Firstly, a volcano can be described as active. So the volcano has erupted recently and it's likely to erupt again. The second cycle is it's dormant. So this is where we say the volcano has gone to sleep. It's not erupted for a long time, but there's still a possibility it might erupt again. The third cycle is extinct volcanoes. It's unlikely to ever erupt again, and it's probably been dormant, not erupted for 25,000 years. Here I'm going to talk about the characteristics of a composite and shield volcano. There are more types of volcanoes than these, but at GCSE level you need to be aware of just these 2. So on the left hand side here we have got a picture of a shield volcano. A shield volcano is gentle, low in height, it's got a flat top and a wide base, and this is because of its lava characteristics. The lava is very runny with low silica content. It's very hot at being 1200 degrees Celsius. As a result, the lava flows far before it solidifies, hence the lava spreads out and we get this low, gently sloping volcano. The type of lava is called basaltic lava, and this type of volcano you would find at a constructive plate margin, such as where the Eurasian plate moves away from the North American plate, forming Iceland. The other type of volcano you need to be aware of is composite volcano, which is on the right hand side here. And you can already see by just looking at the sketches that the shape of this volcano is very different from the shield volcano. Its sides are steep, it's high in height, it has a typical cone shape that we normally associate with volcanoes, it has a narrow base, and this again links to its characteristics of its lava. So it's made of sticky lava, which means it's got high silica content, and it's slightly cooler at 800 degrees Celsius. This means that the lava cools quite quickly, and it doesn't get very far when it has erupted from its crater. So it builds up on top of itself, given the steep-sided volcano shape. This type of lava is called andesitic lava, and it is found at a destructive plate margin, where oceanic crust subducts under continental crust. The Andes was one of the first places that this lava was identified, hence the name andesitic lava. Just going to apply the knowledge from the previous slide about shield volcanoes and composite volcanoes' features or characteristics to an exam question. Typically, this question would be a compare or contrast, which means that you have to write in a like-for-like structure. I use the idea of a tennis court to explain this. So on a tennis court and a tennis match, you've got two players and a net in between them. So on one side, you've got a player that's going to hit the ball across, so that will be stating a characteristic of a composite volcano. The net would be the connective, such as whilst, whereas on the other hand. And then the other side of the court would be your characteristic that you would talk about in the shield volcano. And in your answer, you would go back and forth with the connective joining your sentences. So in the answer below, I have used that approach of this like-for-like structure and used a range of connectives to get full marks. And you're likely to see this question as either a 4 or a 6 mark question. On foundation, it might be 2 to 3 marks. So a shield volcano is formed at a constructive plate margin, whilst a composite volcano forms at a destructive plate margin. So my connective is whilst. A shield volcano has a wide base, is low in height, and has a rounded top. In contrast, a composite volcano has a narrow base, is tall and conical shaped. So I've got my connective there, a different connective from my first. Again, my points are being linked, so I've got a direct comparison between the two. Shield volcanoes have gentle slopes, whilst a composite volcano has steep slopes. Shield volcanoes are made of runny basaltic lava, while composite volcanoes are made from sticky andesitic lava. So within this answer, I have got 4 connectives being used to link the points, and whilst I've said one thing about one type of volcano, I've then said the same characteristic about the other type of volcano. This is what we call like for like, and is the structure that you need to use on compare questions. The last thing to look at is what plate margins do composite and shield volcanoes form at. I've already mentioned previously in the video that a composite volcano is associated with a destructive plate margin, and a shield volcano is associated with a constructive plate margin. So here we have got our diagram of a constructive plate margin where 2 plates are moving apart, and as they move apart there is a gap that forms between the 2 plates. Magma rises to fill that gap, and over time that will build up to form a volcano under the sea, and when it becomes above the surface we get a volcanic island such as Iceland. The line where the 2 plates diverge is called a mid-oceanic ridge. Because the magma that rises from the mantle is basaltic, when the hot molten rock gets onto the surface, it is going to spread out and form this low, flat, gently sided volcano. Remember, this is because the temperature of the lava is 1200 degrees centigrade and it is a runny lava, so it flows far before it solidifies. The other type of volcano is composite volcano, and we can see that composite volcanoes occur at destructive plate margins, where oceanic crust subducts beneath our continental crust. This is our point of subduction here. As the oceanic plate subducts, it melts, that magma collects in a magma chamber, under pressure and then will eventually rise because it's hot and it's less dense than the things around it. It rises to the surface where it erupts, and over time that eruption, the products will build up on top of each other and will form a volcano. Because the lava at a destructive margin is andesitic, meaning it is sticky and cooler than a chilled volcano lava, so it cools at 800 degrees centigrade. When it does erupt and rise to the surface, the lava is going to build up in layers and it's not going to get very far. So we're going to have this steep-sided volcano, which looks like our typical conical shape that we associate normally with volcanoes. The other characteristic to point out between chilled and composite volcanoes is about how frequently they erupt. So because there is no problem with the magma escaping at a constructive plate margin, there's a gap, it's able to move outwards, and the layers of lava are low in silica, okay, that means the gas is able to escape. So our eruptions are frequent but non-violent because the gas doesn't build up. In contrast, at a composite volcano, the lava can sometimes solidify in its vent, blocking off the vent, so which stops the gas from escaping. So all that gas is going to build up and that pressure is going to get enormous. So the eruptions don't happen very often, but when they do erupt, it's very violent. Hence why we get lava bombs and lots of ash, because it's this solidified rock in the vent that is blasted out of the volcano and it kind of breaks into pieces, causing that ash and that pyroclastic material. So that completes this presentation on volcanoes. So you should have a good overview of what they are, where they're found, why they're found where they are, and what their characteristic features are.